Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for our artist talk with Kaylynn TwoTrees. We're going to give everyone a few minutes to join us. In the age of Zoom, it always takes a few minutes. And meanwhile, I'd like to welcome you, TwoTrees, for joining us today.
Thank you, Heather. It's really great to be here, and I'm excited for all the people who are coming.
Yeah. As am I. And I couldn't help but notice that you're in your studio.
Yes, I am.
And I heard that you might be a little busy already, even though the exhibition is open, you're still working.
I'm still working, and I'll talk about that in the talk about the on and on kind of nature of this piece. But yes, I'm working. We're collecting the viewer sounds at the moment and getting ready for a new mix, and it's very exciting.
It is. Well, and I have to say, so many people have commented about your exhibition and have come to visit in the last couple of months, and especially many people who have noticed the recent iteration of the Soundscape that we just debuted last Friday, and just the difference, and how they, a lot of people mentioned that they like to come back and hear it again, just that contrast of sounds.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. Someone even said to me that they thought the video had changed because the sound made it look different. So that was really nice.
I know, and it is. And it's, for us, it's so interesting because sometimes as curators or even working with contemporary art, you tend to sort of only focus on the visual aspects of the creative process. And I always love it when the disciplines can combine, because it gets us to look at the world so differently.
Great. Yeah, and there are so many, I love working with so many amazing people.
As do I. Well, I'm hoping this is a good time for us. And for those of you who are just joining, I'm Heather Ferrell. I'm the curator and director of exhibitions at Burlington City Arts. And I am very thrilled that you're all joining us today for an artist talk with Kaylynn Sullivan TwoTrees. Currently, TwoTrees' immersive installation of painting soundscapes and her video, Falling into Language, a Travelogue, is on view at BCA. And for today's talk, she's going to discuss the evolution of her project, the importance of incorporating vocables into her work, and I'll let her tell you more about those, as well as her collaboration with musicians in Vermont, India, and Japan. And finally, give you a teaser about the ongoing series of vocable workshops by inviting all of you to add your voice to future soundscapes for her installation. Before we begin, and I do my introduction for TwoTrees, I'd like to share a few notes on our program today. We both agree that an interactive format is really sort of fun and engaging. And so for today's artist talk, after introductions, TwoTrees will begin her presentation, but we're encouraging participants to go ahead and pose questions as we go along. And as I see them, I'll pop up on the screen and sort of moderate or share that particular question with TwoTrees. And then that's not the only time you'll have a chance to ask a question. We will also end the presentation and do any kind of further questions, discussion, or wrap up. But we'd really love this to be an interactive dialogue. So keep those questions coming for us. And if you'd like to use the chat feature and just want to share a comment, say hello, please do so as well. A reminder that today's webinar will be recorded and posted on the BCA website in a few days from now. So for now, I'd like to share a brief bio introduction with the very wonderful, talented artist, Kaylynn Sullivan TwoTrees, who is well known for her use of various media, including performance, installation, sculpture, and sound. And the goal of this is to foster further connections between humans, nature, and sacred life. Her work is interdisciplinary and invites collaboration, whether between artists, species, cultures, or beliefs. Her practice has evolved through the guidance of Indigenous elders whose knowledge she has utilized to build a vibrant visual and auditory language, which she shares across the world through classes and exhibitions. TwoTrees is a past recipient of the Lila Wallace International Artist Award, and their work has been exhibited in the US, Europe, and New Zealand. Currently, TwoTrees is an artist in residence in the Masters of Leadership for Sustainability program at the University of Vermont. With this, I'd love to turn the time over to you, TwoTrees.
Thank you. Thank everyone for coming. I'm really happy to have you all here. And I'm going to switch. I'm going to share my screen with you and go to a PowerPoint so I can remind myself and not drift too much as I tell you the story of the evolution of this piece. So let me share my screen, and there, share, and okay, here we are. So falling into language, a travelogue. This is an evolving artwork, and this list of musicians and people is really not full enough. One of the things about this piece and a lot of my work is that it's born of and belongs to an evolving web of relationships, all the way down and all the way up at every step, moving from the mundane to the sacred and back. This is probably the longest duration piece I've ever worked on. And I started in 2012, experimenting with automatic writing and kind of the idea of creating a secret language. And at that time, I didn't realize where I was going with the secret language, but it started to show up in some of the artist books that I made at this time. This is called the Magician's Toolbox, which was made in 2012, and you can see the writing inside of the book. And it became, then they got bigger, the writing got bigger, it needed more space, it went into drawings and just experiments with mark making for quite a while. And I realized that I wanted to create a language that got beyond cultural frameworks, got beyond the ideas of identity. And so I kept playing with this. And in the midst of playing with this, I was introduced to Kabir Das. And that all of the people who are part of that discovery are listed here: Deborah Roberts, Sarah Khan, Shabna Vermani, Linda Hess, Rajaswini, and Vanita Benzali. They all had a part in first introducing me to the Kabir project, and through that, just deepening my love for and my interest in Kabir, who is a 15th century mystic poet and saint who I have been told was illiterate, but hundreds, if not thousands of his poems still exist, sung and recited mostly in northern India, I think. But what drew me to this was the fact that Kabir was pointing to the thing that I was trying to discover through this secret language. It felt like they were both pointing in the same direction, to something mysterious and ineffable. And I wanted to travel there. And that led me to begin to paint over, collage, experiment with this language as part of something, as almost as a palimpsest, as something that was a trace of something left behind that also pointed to the same thing. The paintings, the main body of the paintings happened in 2016, 2017. And the complete narrative was finished in the beginning of 2018. And I have this quote of Kabir up here because I feel like this journey of painting these paintings and collaging, and there were about 70, and this is what I chose out of the 70 to make the narrative, which became a score in my mind, meant to be sung, meant to be articulated with breath in the voice. And this quote is relevant to this because there's something about burning down my house, burning down my connection to family, culture, identity, cosmology, even, to make space for something new to emerge that was bigger than all of that, that contained all of it. I mean, it wasn't a destruction, but it was a letting go, to let go of all of that, to find something new. I have heard many times from physicists and other folks that we are made of stardust. And if we are, then we share a cosmic ancestry. And so these paintings became for me memories or traces that were part of painting my way back home, and hope that this installation is a trail of clues to our shared cosmic ancestry. And the reason I chose language was because I think that we rely on language as part of our identity, as part of the way that we navigate the world. And there is something that happens when we move from language to different kinds of expression, to imagery and sound without meaning. And I had read this this quote from Ursula Le Guin from a story that she wrote called She Unnames Them, that Eve yearns to, I keep changing the slides. I'm sorry about that. Eve yearns to return to a primordial state when the misunderstandings caused by words no longer stand between her and the rest of creation. So she unnames all the animals, from the sea otters to the bees. When she's done, she marvels on how they feel far closer than when their names had stood between myself and them like a clear barrier. That's what I was looking for with the secret language. That's what I was looking for as a relationship of both sound and imagery that had the same power that I experienced from vocables. And vocables are come in many singing traditions, not just indigenous ones, but there are other singing traditions that have vocables, and they reach beyond the barriers of culture that often divide us. They are a sound without literal meaning, or a sequence of sounds without literal meaning. And in many cultures, they reconnect the breath to the individual breath to the one breath. And so it makes a connection with consciousness and creation that's not possible when we start assigning meaning to sound. So I was interested in whether or not there were singers or musicians who could sing these paintings to life through a series of vocables, by exploring the world of vocables. And Heidi Wilson has been a friend for a long time, and she introduced me to Gideon Crevichet, who's also a friend now, because we've been working together on this since 2018. And they produced the first Soundscape, and Heidi stood in my studio, standing on my dining room table, face to face with the paintings the first time, to try to find the sound that came from them to her. And it was awesome. And that work continued with them through the first, it allowed me to produce the first iteration of the video, because it was clear to me that hearing them sung made me want to have them be seen in some other way than as paintings, to be seen in a visual way but not as paintings with all of the cultural meaning and preciousness that's assigned to paintings. And so I imagined them as a film. During this time, I worked with other voices, other musicians. I worked with Michele, who's from Madagascar, and his use of the valia for a soundscape. We did workshops with the Wilds Beyond Climate Justice and the participants from that, with friends and strangers, pretty much anyone I could seduce into trying to create a soundscape for this film. All of that drew me to the land of Kabir, because I felt that standing on the land that brought these poems that so clearly pointed to what I was trying to point to, I needed to be on the land that those poems came out of. And so I was drawn there, and I was drawn to the Mumbai Kabir Festival. And it's important, this is important because these relationships with these musicians and the people I met through the festival are part of the evolving web of relationships that are integral to this piece. Traveling to Rajasthan to see and meeting people there, eating the food, visiting the land, visiting farmers on the land, also was a part of trying to feel my way into what could evolve out of this. And during that first trip, I met Shruti Vishnath, and I met Nehal Devi and Yogesh Sharma, and they're an important part of how this continued to grow. Shruti, when I returned to the US, Shruti came to Vermont and performed here for us. And I introduced her to the first film version of Falling into Language. And she, we talked about her contributing a soundscape. And at that time, I imagined all of the musicians might work together. This was before COVID. And so there was an idea that there could be some kind of in-studio collaboration. And she also suggested that Yuji Nakagawa would also be part of this, and that we would meet the next time I came back to India and go from there. By now, you must be wondering what it all sounded like by then. And this is just a small clip of the very first home movie that I made. I returned to India after that, thinking that I had a little movie that I could do something with, and wanting to upgrade it, to turn it into what I envisioned that could be played large on the wall, could be enveloping. And Nehal Devi, who I showed before, who I had met in my first trip, has been an incredible inspiration to me. And she introduced me to Swati and Dinesh, who turned my homemade video into the beautiful piece of work that it is now. They took it to another level and allowed me to see what was possible with that video. And I'm eternally grateful to them both and to Nehal. And it allowed me the return trip allowed me another chance to experience many more musicians of Kabir, many more versions of the voice of Kabir and the finger that's pointing, and also allowed me to hear in the bottom right-hand photo, to hear Shruti and Yuji together, and to know then that it was really important to hear them and on the soundscape, and to include Yuji in the process. And a part of doing all of that and making the new recordings and making the film was being at home in Mumbai. And Arti Sate was my host and made my life actually quite comfortable and wonderful, and made it possible that I had a home base where I could do what I needed to do, where Shruti and Yuji could come and play in the living room, and we could talk about where the project would go. The relationships go on and on. And as it happens during that second trip, COVID arrived. And it was Arti who helped me through the process of evacuation. I could not have done that on my own. And it was quite an experience. And at this point, I think COVID becomes one of the beings in the web of relationships around this piece. Because when I came back with this new film, it was time to create a new soundscape. My home movie was way too long. And what we created in Mumbai with Dinesh and Swati was so much more concise. And it needed a different quality of sound. So we started in the time of COVID, recording and mixing outside. Gideon and Heidi made new tracks for a new soundscape. Gideon and I mixed those into a new soundscape, and we did all of this up in Plainfield, Vermont, and at Gideon's place, and in my house in Heinsberg. We did this all through the winter, so we had snowy mixing sessions and recording sessions, and so that we could be outdoors and we could have some recording time where we were unmasked. The next phase of this piece was really about what happens to the paintings. What is the role of the paintings after they've done their job as a score and a libretto? And what I imagined was that they would become artifacts. They would become fragments. They would become what was left from the journey, the things you picked up along the road in a travelogue when you go on a trip, the little rock by the side of the road or whatever. And so I began tearing the paintings up and creating these fragments that I distressed or burned a little, and also creating the labels for these artifacts that were meant to be a kind of guide to this travelogue mythology. And that led to the installation that opened at BCA on June 4th this year, which I'm really happy about. Getting to see it live in the space it was the first time I'd ever seen it as large as I imagined it. And it was the first time that I'd heard the soundscapes in that kind of space. And this is the soundscape that Heidi and Gideon finished for the new video. This is a clip of that. it had come a long way. It had come a very long way. And once we opened with that soundscape and that video, Gideon and I started working with Shruti and Yuji to create the second soundscape. Yuji is studied in India for many years, but lives in Japan. So we were receiving recordings from Japan and India, and working with them back and forth to try to maintain their vision and create and mix the soundscape on this side of the ocean. And this is a piece of the video, the same video, but with the India soundscape. I hate leaving these. The piece continues to evolve, and we have had one vocable workshop for viewers and participants that was led by Heidi. And we're hoping to begin mixing the viewers' voices into a new soundscape. And I'm so honored to be hopefully working with Bindu Malini. We're starting the process now, and she will create the vocal bedrock for the viewers' voices as the third soundscape, which will be added in September before the closing of the show. And really excited about this new soundscape. There's something about creating the soundscapes that allow us to create memory. The reason it's called falling into language is that one hopes that we will fall into and through language, through these sounds and images, to some kind of memory of this both the cosmic ancestry and the kind of the whole tastes of the wholeness, tastes of the mystery, falling back into a memory from deep inside ourselves. That's the hope. And so the more people that participate, it feels like there are more threads of the wholeness. And in the spaces between the people that participate, there's also the possibility for what's not heard to be present, the breath, the mystery. On and on, it goes on and on. We have other iterations. I have other iterations of this that I imagine and see and feel even after this exhibition. But while this exhibition is up, you have the possibility to add your voice to this ongoing, evolving soundscape process. And the next virtual vocal workshop will be with Shruti Vinavishnuath, and I hope that any of you who are here today might join us for that if you haven't already joined one of the other workshops. And we're really excited to see where this goes. And I keep saying we rather than I, because I go back to the idea, this piece could not exist without the web of relationships. All the people named and unnamed. I know I forgot people, and there are endless stories. I mean, I feel like I'm rushing through what could be story after story after story about how Kabir brought me together with so many people, how the idea of vocables brought me together with so many people here, how the time in Rajasthan changed my idea even about vocables. And so I look forward to the continuing journey. And since I didn't tell all the stories, I would love for any questions or comments or ideas or anything you want clarified about this, to hear from you. Since I can't see you in this version of a webinar, I'd love to hear from you.
Yes, definitely, everyone, please pose a question for us. And TwoTrees, thank you again for leading us through this fascinating journey of your creative process and these concentric circles of community that you built through collaboration, which for me as a curator is always fascinating because there's such maybe an outdated paradigm of the sole artist working alone in the studio doing one particular thing, and this idea of a precious object. And you've shown the opposite, that creativity comes in so many forms, and we don't always get to see that in a museum exhibition. We don't always get to see these different perspectives. And so I feel very fortunate to have met you and to work together on this project.
Yes, I do too. And I have to say that for me, there is something, this is the first installation I've done that looks so clean and yet has so many moving parts. It's kind of, it feels like an anomaly, even to me.
Oh, great. It looks like we have one. Oh, congratulations. We've got a couple of, I'll read a couple of chats here from Omi Jones who says, I'm so glad to be here and experience your work, TwoTrees. And Yogesh Sharma, who loves the soundscapes. And then please forgive me, I might mispronounce your name, Nafatiti. TwoTrees, congratulations on a masterpiece. And really just so many aspects to it. And Erica says, thank you for what you did. It's so incredible and inspiring. And Heidi is awesome. I've done singing workshops with her as well. And Nahal Devi, love your work. So glad to know you. And as I know, people can be a little shy, sometimes even on Zoom. So I would love to pose a question for you in terms of, it's always fascinating. I mean, this has been a long journey for you, and it's constantly been evolving in what the collaborations, the project, even like revisiting scores. I'm wondering how you've grown or maybe changed as an artist during this time, if you've had any observations or reflections of even how you work.
Yes, I've changed. Some of the change I think has to do with this piece, and some of it I think has to do with living into my 7th decade. You know, I mean, some of it is just being on the planet a long time, I think. But what really happened with this piece, like I said, it's the longest I've worked on anything, is that I had to learn to follow the piece rather than drive the piece. And it happened at every stage, going from paintings to film really changed everything. And even in the color of the paintings, having to let go of things being exactly like the paintings in the film. Letting go, letting go, letting go, letting go. Even there were soundscapes that got created that didn't get used because the resonance between what ultimately came out as the video, that sound didn't work anymore. So it's been really interesting to follow. And especially when it came to tearing up the paintings. That's
brave. And yet it's a belief in your work that I find fascinating. Well, we do have a few questions now all queued up, and thank you everyone for your patience. From Ami Jones, who says, thank you so much for your vision. The work is glorious. And how has your spiritual life been shaped by this seemingly deeply spiritual work?
Not just the work, the travel, the journey itself. I think that I had to, well, what I know happened in the course of making this piece was that I came to the edge of my own cosmology. Like where I was going wasn't supported by the cosmology that I grew up with. And I had to jump off into the arms of something else. And what urged me to jump was falling in love with Kabir. It was like a love affair in the beginning. I really felt like some of how I felt was very similar to falling in love, but I had to fall into that and find out where I would land. And I've landed someplace that I actually don't know how to describe. And I have to thank again, Nehal and Yogesh have been a huge support and sounding board and fellow travelers, fellow seekers. It's been wonderful to find a community where I could explore that jump. Where am I now? No.
In fact, well, because Nehal, I should say, also asked if you could talk about if or how, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing this, bhakti or devotional aspect of spirituality in India has changed you, or just maybe expand on that at all, or that might kind of already tie into what you said. I'm not sure.
I think it does. And I think I'm still exploring. Devotion in Western culture, and even the idea of devotion in my own indigenous upbringing has a different connotation here than bhakti. And so I'm exploring what that means. And I feel like the free fall and trusting the free fall of jumping is part of that exploration, and being able to have deep companions on that journey. Also meeting, I'm still discovering. I don't know the answer to that. I'm still discovering.
And I think that kind of ties in to these themes of like this ongoing iterative nature of the work as well as your own explorations. And one of our anonymous attendees asks, what are the new questions that might have come up during this journey? Are they taking you to other layers of exploration, creativity, or I could say that creatively?
I think one of the big questions that I am really I don't know the word to use, engaging with, let's say, both creatively, spiritually, intellectually, all of those ways, is identity. How do you let go of it? How to let go of it? What happens if you let go of it? What happens if you give up the notion of I? Where do you land? Where do you stand? How do you be with that? And I know that in my own tradition, the relationship with nature gives you some, a kind of a ground to work with. But what if you let go of that as well? What if you just keep letting go? And what happens to how you think of I? Who is I? And the inner I and the outer I, and moving back and forth between those. Yeah. And I'm really inspired by Nehal's work and her eye to eye artwork and exploration. But I think that that's the question that I'm really exploring now. And how do we stay connected to the larger whole and let go of that?
Oh, that's fascinating. I know that another question to follow that kind of on a different track, because I have also been asked by other people, including Nefertiti, as far as, are you planning to tour this exhibit? And people said, this is a fantastic show. Where else is it going? Other people need to see it. And I know, unfortunately, with our small team, we can't tour it, but I always am there to support artists to get the work and share it out there. And I know we've had some conversations initially, TwoTrees, about, other people need to see it. How can we share it?
I hope that it will manifest somewhere else. And I see it bigger. It will, in its next iteration, it would be bigger. There would be multiple rooms and multiple ways to experience it. And I don't know how that will happen. In the past, I would have had ideas and I would have been driving something. And so if anyone out there has any ideas, let me know.
Well, I always say that too. You never know. Who knows who?
Who knows who? I would love for it to go somewhere. And I'm following rather than driving. So I actually think that the piece knows where it wants to go. And so the more people that talk about it, maybe the piece will find its home, its next home. I also think that where the piece is going is also, I want to explore more with sound. And so we're talking about the idea of an album of sonic fragments, like the visual fragments on the wall, that could be really interesting, another iteration. Also, the piece, all three versions of the piece, when it is finished, will live in an archive on the Crossroads Leadership Lab website, so that you can go and visit and read about the piece and probably watch this talk and other things. And and I will keep doing vocable workshops. We will keep doing those workshops to keep having the ability to add voices over time. So where it's going is both a place and other iterations.
Yeah. Wonderful. And again, we haven't had a chance yet to move on to our thank yous, but I do want to add a note with the Crossroad Leadership Lab. They've been wonderful collaborators for the workshops and for helping cross promote those programs, as well as the artist talk. So thank you for connecting us, TwoTrees, to them.
Well, and I'm going to see if there's, can I say one more thing?
Please.
For those of you who come to the talk and not seen the exhibition, there is a very nice virtual tour on the BCA website where you can click on little dots and see things more closely. So you can read the labels next to the fragments and get an idea of that mythology. You can see clips of the video when you click on the video. And so I think it will give you a little broader sense of the work. I mean, I talked about the process, but you didn't get to have a sense of the experience. And the immersion of it, I think, is only happen in person, but I think that the virtual tour gives you a good sense. I just want to say that.
Yes, no, thank you for mentioning that. And for those of you who are in the area, we really encourage you to come and visit us. We're free and open to the public. And you need to spend some time in there, and maybe more than once, because we have this new vocable soundscape coming in the fall. Well, if there aren't any further questions,
thank you, everybody.
I am going to maybe do a few thank yous, starting with my thank you to you, TwoTrees, for such an amazing exhibition and your thoughts on the work and sharing those today with us for the artist talk. So thank you.
And thank everyone for coming. Really, thank you, everybody who showed up.
Yes, and I'd like to also thank, as we say, the man behind the Zoom screen, and that is Colin Storrs, our curatorial assistant and resident Zoom webinar expert. Thank you, Colin, as well as our communications team for helping share this program with our larger community. As a reminder, the program today is recorded. It will probably be up in a few days on our website. So it's a great way to kind of share and connect as well. And to thank you to the UVM's Crossroad Leadership Lab. Really, they've been amazing to work with on the workshops and getting the word out about these programs. And if you missed it on the presentation or in the talk, the second Add Your Voice workshop with TwoTrees will be on Saturday, September 4th at 11 a.m. And she will be featured, TwoTrees, along with a guest singer and musical collaborator, Shruti Veena Vishwanath. And very excited to see that program. And exhibitions such as Falling into Language, a travelogue, would not be possible without the financial and in-kind support of our funders here at BCA. So a special thank you to Mascoma Bank, presenters of our 2021 Year of Exhibitions, the National Endowment for the Arts, and the Vermont Arts Council. And again, if you haven't had a chance to see the exhibition and really experience the soundscape in person, please come visit us at Burlington City Arts. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.